Who's the best fantasy running back after Adrian Peterson?
Can you afford to wait to the 6th round to draft a quarterback?
Is Chris Johnson a member of the Communist Party?
And why does Tony Romo hate America?
These questions and more answered on today's Fantasy War Room Draft Special.
Live.
To tape. Welcome to the War Room Fantasy Draft Special. I'm Matt Ufford. Alongside me, 7-time fantasy champion Nick Stevens. How are you, sir?
Pleasure to be here, sir.
We stand right now on the precipice of the 2013 NFL season. Exciting times for us as we go into fall. We are going to preview exactly everything that you need to know before getting into your fantasy draft. What strikes you about this season?
It's a very crucial time we find ourselves right now because some people have drafted and are full of that sort of preemptive draft regret. I'm not a huge fan of a late August draft. I want to wait until the NFL has played out their 4 games, including the most meaningless 4th game. Why? Because I think I'm going to get a bunch of third stringers on my fantasy team? No, just so I can sit on it a little longer and let the rookies and the rubes and the noobs make their drafts, make their mistakes, and then stick to your game plan. Fantasy, if nothing else, in a game that means nothing, it is pretend, is all about discipline.
Discipline. Let's get right into running backs. We have the richest and deepest draft for running backs that we've seen in what, 6, 7 years or more?
Sure, probably since we drifted away from the famous you need a running back or you need 2 running backs to win fantasy. Remember the good old days when it used to just be like, I'm going to take Marshall Faulk first overall, and then everyone else would go, well, we're going to lose to him at the end of the year. Somebody would take LaDainian Tomlinson, probably the most oft-selected #1 fantasy overall pick.
Incredible.
Guaranteed playoff trip. Mm-hmm. Guaranteed playoff trip.
Could not lose.
And now we don't have that anymore, or do we?
Do we? Adrian Peterson is the consensus #1 overall just by ADP, and because if you do not select him overall, first overall, you will be laughed out of the room.
Remember, you can't spell ADP without AP.
That was really good. I like him #1 overall. I do think we need to pump the brakes on him having another 2,000-yard season. This is of the 6 running backs prior to Adrian Peterson who finished with 2,000 yards in a season. The average was for the following year is about 1,100 yards, and the no back of those 6, we're talking O.J. Simpson, Chris Johnson, has done better than 1,400 yards.
Well, first of all, you'll have to apologize if I do a henchman laugh at the notion of Adrian Peterson only getting 1,100 yards this season.
That's the average.
Mind you, that's the average, fine. But every now and again, somebody else has to screw up the mathematics so as to have an average. A Chris Johnson may have a failure-ridden season, which sets the low, and you'll have an Adrian Peterson on the high. Might he run for 2,000 yards again? Maybe not. I wouldn't put it as doubtful. Maybe we'll check it in as a fantasy questionable. But
I don't want to bet against Adrian Peterson.
No, it's a terrible idea. Do not ever bet against Adrian Peterson. But the man did tear up his knee 13 ways from Sunday. By Christmas, the next fall, people were taking him from the 3rd to the 6th round, and he had put up one of the best seasons in running back in fantasy history. Never bet against him.
So let's say you have the 2nd or 3rd pick. Are you going Arian Foster? Are you going Doug Martin? Who's next for you?
I don't know if I'm all in on Doug Martin.
I'm not either.
I'm not. I looked up his stats last year. 7 or 8 really terrific games. One in which he just exploded, and everybody won. You know what? If you're the guy who lost your fantasy matchup that week, the week that he had 51 points, I want to know who you are because I want to see how terrible you were at football.
Yeah.
You must know somebody named Doug Martin, and that's why you drafted him. I am still in on Arian Foster. I understand. Nobody has carried the ball more or touched the ball more in the NFL the last 3 years, and it's about time.
Incredible in the red zone.
You know, cars start getting up 75, 80,000 miles. You want to get the engine checked out. Maybe got to fix the air filter. Could pop a tire. The manifold's getting kind of rusty. It's still worth driving. I mean, because it's him and who else? I'm not going to trust Doug Martin with only 1 year proven. I know what I'm going to get out of Marshawn Lynch. And I just can't buy C.J. Spiller because he's never carried the ball enough to be an Arian Foster. I still think Fred Jackson's going to steal some touches. I would almost go LaShawn McCoy just because I, like you, am a believer in the Chip Kelly offense.
I really do. I think LaShawn McCoy is going to have a fantastic year. Can we roll it over to the next bunch of group?
Well, we can't forget Jamal Charles.
Jamal Charles, I think, is going to have a fantastic year. Kansas City's offense is going to be revitalized a la Philadelphia. I think we're going to see the KC and Philadelphia. You can do a lot worse than picking up the players out of those offenses. Jamal Charles, I love. I would take him ahead of Doug Martin.
Gladly as well. And we all know that there's two significant corollary effects to Andy Reid coming to your team and to your football town. A, the quarterback's play increases significantly. They usually finish within the top 12 statistically, as does your starting running back. And B, restaurants that sell beef go through the roof.
At Kansas City,
There's a lot of
barbecue
beef.
and Andy Reid are a match made in heaven. And then the 6 through 10 sort of group of running backs, you and I are in agreement. I think LaShawn McCoy will be a top 3 fantasy running back this year. If you get him at 8 or 9 overall, you are going to be a very happy human being.
A preseason does not a fantasy superstar make. However, of all the running backs I saw this preseason, by far the one who looked the most excited to rip it up and regain his form. You know, the 20 touchdowns he scored 2 seasons ago
yes,
for him.
I have not forgotten.
It's LaShawn McCoy running out of that Oregon Duck pistol that Chip Kelly has brought, along with his blueberry avocado smoothies and constant Nickelback and Lenny Kravitz being played. Apparently, Lenny Kravitz and Nickelback and avocado smoothies do a body and a football so good.
You got to mix it up sometimes. Also in the top 10, Ray Rice. Unless you've got a PPR league, I am not in love with Ray Rice as a first round running back for your fantasy team.
Ray Rice trended upwards. The happiest day in Ray Rice's life was not when they won the Super Bowl. It's the day they fired Cam Cameron and brought in Jim Caldwell. And I'm not even sure what Jim Caldwell did other than say, put the ball in the hands of the best player.
Yeah.
And that took the attention away from Flacco, and then he could be tall, boring, and accurate. And thus, that and Deer Antler Spray later, we have a Super Bowl in Baltimore.
Yeah, I think that Bernard Pierce is going to steal too many red zone touches from Ray Rice. I'm not going to say avoid Ray Rice. I'm just saying there are other guys in the first round that I'd rather have.
Somebody who does trouble me a little bit. I'm a big Trent Richardson guy, and I really hope this year that Coach Chud coming in and the revitalization of the Browns' inner workings, bringing in Norvell Turner as the offensive coordinator, terrible HC, wonderful OC.
Does good
I think
things.
he's going to know what to do with Trent Richardson. He might actually make something out of Brandy Whedon. There'll be a very positive fantasy impact on the Browns this year.
I'm excited for Richardson's season.
I'm not too sold on the Butler right now, and I've got him as a keeper in one of my biggest leagues. I get him in the 11th round.
That's fantastic.
Right?
Fantastic. At the end of the first round, I don't know. I don't know. I mean,
It's the RG3 factor. They're all going to vote. It's going to be packed. They're going to ram it up. They're going to come in on. They're going to crowd Alfred Morris, which means they're going to try and make RG3 in his rebuilt knee beat them.
I think what the first round comes down to is we've got tons of running backs, and it just comes down to which guy is the line, the Megatron line, where it's like, you know what, I don't need this running back. I would rather have Calvin Johnson. I would certainly rather have Calvin Johnson than Alfred Morris.
Yes, on any given day, if you stick again to the discipline. The discipline, of course, being running backs, wide receivers, and a 5th, 6th round quarterback. That's the new discipline in fantasy draft.
I feel like if you're at the end of the first round, do not feel so pressured to take Alfred Morris. When in the second round you've got Matt Forte, you've got Stephen Ridley's going to be there, MJD's going to be there, Reggie Bush might be in the third round available. There are good options for the running back outside of the first round.
Reggie Bush being available in your third round, considering, and he's going to be, I'll talk more about him in the program later, but Reggie Bush being available in the third, maybe even possibly the fourth round, is reaching into a bathtub full of ice and Bud Lights and finding a Heineken at the bottom.
Oh yeah, and let me add also.
And I don't even like Heineken, but it's just a better beer.
Nobody does. David Wilson. I ordinarily shy away from the New York Giants running backs because Tom Coughlin, you don't know what's going to happen with that. He loves to mix it up, and so you're always disappointed with who's starting week to week on the Giants. With Andre Brown's leg broken, Wilson's going to get those touches. He's going as the 18th running back off the board at 32 overall. I would love to have David Wilson right there.
I remember watching David Wilson in the Sugar Bowl, about 20 months ago, and thinking like, This guy has pro-caliber speed. He's built like a running back, and he's not afraid to run between the tackles, but he's got break-it-outside speed. I loved everything I saw from him in Va-Tech, and always thought this guy is going to be a stud in the NFL. And now this is just one of those kind of chances. Like it was going to be a running back by committee with Andre Brown and David Wilson, but you're not supposed to lose your job to an injury. This isn't necessarily Andre Brown losing his job. He's out for 2 months.
Nope.
This is David Wilson's opportunity to shine. And everyone knows that the Giants team in general, but that offense is in flux. Nix wants a contract. Brandon Myers, new tight end. Victor Cruz is in a walking boot, fresh off getting that contract.
Yep.
We're not really sure what the steadying factor is there. It's gonna be the running back with the most boring name in football, David Wilson.
Let's move on from running backs to quarterbacks, signal callers. Obviously, at the top of the heap is Drew Brees and Aaron Rodgers, neck and neck. Peyton Manning, by the way, as we talk about discussing the ADP for the show, average draft position for you newbies, this is taken from fantasypros.com. It's a accumulation, an aggregate of 6 different fantasy sites. So if you disagree with Peyton Manning at 20.8 overall, that's what you're getting. I would happily take. I'm not so huge on Cam Newton, although at 36th overall, I'd take him. Sure.
I mean, there's no shame. Whoever has the 12th and 4/5 pick, that's a John Malkovich-esque league, but numbers aside, if you're in a 12-team league, it's a snake draft. Rodgers is available at 12, and you don't take him either at 12 or 13, that's a mistake.
Yeah.
Now, if you're going to go back to what I said a minute ago, but Nick, wait a second, you just said I got to go RB, wide receiver, quarterback. Yeah, but when there's a guy there who's going to average you 18 points a week, bare minimum, and sometimes blow up for 30 or more, you can find an Eddie Lacy later on, or maybe you can get that David Wilson in the 3rd round to make up for it, but you're not going to find a quarterback who's going to single-handedly win a game 3 to 4 times a year in fantasy.
So many people get married to the idea of I have to go running back, quarterback, wide receiver. Don't look at you've got to take a balance. Look at the best value for your pick.
Sure.
And yes, team need is very important. You don't want to go into the 5th round having only one running back. Obviously, that's not the case.
No, but you want to if you want to finish 9th in your league. Yes.
But again, you can't just turn down one of the best quarterbacks in the. Don't leave him hanging out there.
No, if you're drafting, okay, let's say you pick 3rd, and it's the top of the 3rd round, and somehow Peyton Manning, someone who was thinking about getting him, but then has running back on the mind, decided I'm gonna pass, I'm gonna wait, I'm gonna get him back on the snake with pick 29, and you're picking 27. You'd be a fool not to get him. He had 37 touchdowns last year.
Yep.
All they did was get more familiar with the system, get 1 year healthier with the neck,
add
and
Wes
add
Welker.
it, and the WWF, the Wes Welker factor.
Yeah.
So
I think that's an excellent point. Although we must note that that there is enough depth at quarterback. It used to be if you didn't have Rodgers, Brady, Breeze, then you had no hope of catching those top guys. There's some depth and depth that goes into the 5th, even 6th rounds.
Sure.
Because some people are going to be targeting the young running quarterbacks. They're going to be targeting Colin Kaepernick. Russell Wilson's around the 74th overall ADP.
People fell in love hard with those 2 guys just because of their playoff performances. It's risky.
Here's the thing: fantastic quarterbacks. I'm
Sure.
a Seahawks fan. I love watching Wilson. Both of those guys, not terrific fantasy quarterbacks. Colin Kaepernick, in 7 starts in the regular season last year, had only 1 game where he had more than 20 fantasy points.
Do you know who Colin Kaepernick has to thank for his inflated fantasy draft pick?
Who's that?
Dom Capers. And the horrific defense that they play. Apparently,
my.
they never watched. It was just sort of hey, we're going to go in San Francisco and we're going to hit Colin Quinn in the mouth. No, first, he didn't used to be on remote control. Second, did you miss his debut performance against Chicago where he threw lasers all over the field and then ran circles around everyone?
Stole Alex Smith's job with 1 game.
With 1 game on Monday Night Football.
So outside this top 5, you got Matt Ryan, ADP of 39. Love it. Getting him in the getting him in the early 4th round. Again, these guys, fantastic. Love to get them. If you don't get them, that's fine. I don't need Drew Brees because Matt Ryan is throwing to Julio Jones, to Roddy White, to Tony Gonzalez. Each of those 3 guys are as good as fantasy options as you're going to get.
Total fantasy
Adding
stalwarts.
Steven
You need
Jackson
it.
to
Yeah.
the mix, like that's a great offense. Matt Ryan's going to make you happy. Another guy, 60th overall, 8th quarterback off the board, Matt Stafford. I know what you think. He's throwing for 4,000 yards a year.
Separate my emotions from the numbers. Do not let emotions get involved in statistics. Always go into paying bills at the house in a good mood, because if you start looking at the facts and figures, you're going to get real mad because everyone's spending the money. Matt Stafford is infuriating to have.
He's infuriating to watch. He is. However, if you look at things that normalize after one season removed from his brilliant, amazing fantasy season, you're probably disappointed with his 20 touchdowns to 17 interceptions ratio last year. Calvin Johnson was pushed out inside the 3-yard line 7 times last year.
That's right.
7 times.
Detroit receivers in the hole with the Calvin Johnson factor were tackled from the 10 to the 1 over 10 times. That's 10 touchdowns that should normally have been had. Plus, the running backs that he was handing the ball off to, Mikhail Baryshnikov and Joyous Bell Music, or whatever his name is. I don't even want to bother learning. Joik Bell,
He's now deceased.
If that is your real name, communist. They weren't even that good in the front. McKellisher was okay.
Reggie Bush is going to make touchdown receptions from things that are regular swing passes.
And he's going to make Matt Stafford better, because people are going to start respecting the space in I like to call it check down country. 3 yards behind the line of scrimmage, 7 yards in the flat, either way where Reggie Bush is going to live this year. People are going to respect that, which is going to mean there's going to be more room over the top for either Megatron or Ryan Broyles or the terrible tight end bike. He's not bad. I know he tore his ACL last year. He's a competent number 2 receiver. He just needs to heal and get into the program.
All right.
I'm just saying.
One last quarterback that I'd like to mention, available with a 71 ADP, 5th round, even the 6th, Tony Romo.
Tony Romo.
Nobody trusts Tony Romo, because you shouldn't trust Tony Romo. But here's the thing, puts up great fantasy numbers.
Yeah.
I don't want, if I as a Cowboys fan, which I'm not, thankfully, you have to hate watching fourth quarters of close games with him, because you know that interception is going to break the Cowboys, and they'll lose the chance to go to the playoffs in week 16 or 17 every year. But that interception is just minus 2 points over your fantasy score sheet, and it pales in comparison to the 24 points that he's already gotten you that game.
Allow me to remind you also that he threw 29 touchdown passes last year, scrambled for a few as well, had a couple of games that were beyond Romo-tastic, like the 700 interception party that he threw for the Chicago Bears and didn't bother inviting the Cowboys offense to on Monday night in the middle of the season.
It's unfortunate.
Just an absolute worst Evite ever. And then you got to think also, like, the offense was gelling. Dez was hurt. He hadn't fulfilled his role. Miles Austin was a little hurt last year. I think there was a game where Jason Witten actually coughed up a lung or his spleen and still tried to play. Yep. DeMarco Murray was hurt. Now you're heading into the season with a healthy DeMarco Murray, with a healthy Jason Witten.
DeMarco Murray healthy for 3 weeks.
Yeah, that's like saying, like, hey, I drove off the lot in a brand new Pinto. How was I supposed to know it was going to explode 7 blocks down the street?
Yeah.
You've got Dez Bryant, who I think is the number 2 receiver in all of football, and you've got Miles Austin, who I'm going to address later on in the show as well. That is a healthy offense ready to fire on all cylinders, and best of all, Princeton was stripped of the playbook, and good old plod ahead Bill Callahan was handed the reins, and he's just going to do what Tony Romo does best. Throw the ball downfield, don't run around like a knucklehead and try to win the game yourself. Put it in the hands of your skill players.
Yep, I agree.
But you have to say one thing. For entertainment value alone, Tony Romo should be the number 1 quarterback in fantasy football.
It is. If you can just watch it for entertainment value, it's fun.
The word vexing comes to mind.
Let's move on to wide receivers. Number 1, probably the best fantasy wide receiver of all time, Megatron, Calvin Johnson.
He's pretty good at football and catching it.
1,964 receiving yards last year. More yards than anybody has ever gotten in a season, besting even Jerry Rice. Only 5 touchdowns, a product of freak occurrence that we don't have to worry about again this year.
How many times did people check their team last year and they would see like 11 catches for 178 yards? And then, how the curse word? Did you not get in the end zone?
And also,
it just happened.
That was his numbers in the third quarter.
Yeah. I mean, Matt Stafford threw the ball last year, and this again goes back to why he's so frustrating, because so many incompletions, the number of interceptions that are just going to have to come with you throwing the ball, on average, 45 times a game. He threw it 720 times a game last year. 16 times 45 is 720. That's a lot of balls to go around. That number is going to drop probably to 600 this year, we'll say, or maybe in the high fives, which is still astronomical. And he's going to have, like, the means will have to trend in the reverse way, and Megatron's going to find the house 5-6 more times. That's why he's one of the few guys worth skipping an RB in the first round for.
Yes, I agree. In the second round, we've got Des Bryant. I think that Brandon Marshall at 21.5 ADP is a little bit low. I think he's going to have Mark Trestman's offense is only going to be throwing the ball and moving the ball a lot more around. I think Brandon Marshall, I would take him over Julio Jones, who I love. I love Julio Jones.
Yes.
But with Roddy White still being very, very good.
Has Julio Jones fulfilled the promise of having the entire Atlanta Falcons 2011 draft traded for him yet?
He's an excellent receiver.
Almost.
Almost.
Not entirely.
Yeah.
Not completely yet. He's very good. He is not a complete receiver. When the day comes when he knocks on the door and says, I get it, he's going to be we might be talking about him as the number 2 receiver in all of fantasy.
Here's the thing. He's the number 1 option for the Atlanta Falcons offense, but as long as Roddy White is 1A, there's going to be those 4 to 5 to 6 games a year where Roddy White catches more balls than Julio Jones.
Oh, sure. And Roddy White is the best third-round safety valve at wide receiver, maybe in the last 5 years. I can't miss 85 catch, 1,100 yards, 7 touchdown wide receiver.
Picked him up just in the last draft that I did. Feel really good about it.
Brandon Marshall, though, let me tell you a little something about the Chicago Bears offense. Regardless of if Captain Quebec has come in and Mark Trestman is integrating the CFL offense, which is all about playing in space because they've got the wider and the longer field, for a guy his size and his intensity, can play extremely well in space, moves very well, but is also a great deep threat and straight line runner. Every single play begins with Jay Cutler going, set, hut, hike, where's Marshall? To prove the point, let me call the control room and find out Brandon Marshall's 2012 stats, okay? Control room. Yes, Steven's here. Could you tell me how many times Brandon Marshall was targeted last year and also how many receptions he had? Okay, thanks.
And of course, for those of you wondering, we are wired with the most modern technology. Our boys in the control room will get back to us just as soon as the most modern computers can produce that information. The amazing things of technology these days.
They're like wheels of tape this big that spin around and around.
We will eventually put a man on the moon.
Stop it. And here we go. Information just like that. Steven's here.
Yeah, Brandon Marshall had 118 receptions on 194 targets last year, which represented 40% of all Bears passes were targeted to him.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Give yourself a pay raise. So last year, Brandon Marshall.
2 out of every 5 passes was headed Brandon Marshall's way.
118 catches, 194 targets. 40% of the passing offense. Need I say more?
You need not. Let's move on to tight ends, where, ooh, man, the crop is thin.
It is. Considering how in vogue tight ends and 2 tight end offenses are in the NFL right now, which does bring up my new thing, which is the danger of the tight end by committee. You would think there would be more studs you'd want to draft, but you go Graham, you go Gronkowski, you used to be able to go somebody else who apparently, instead of making it rain, that was angel dust he was kicking off of his hands.
Yes, he was.
It's those 2 guys and everyone else. Where else do you go if you can't get Gronk or Graham?
That's a great question. I think, and this is a 1 season only sort of thing. Jermichael Finley, who I have owned before and hated with all of my heart because the drops, the infuriating lack of production, and then you put him on the bench and he scores 3 touchdowns in a game. Hate Jermichael Finley. However, contract year, he is the kind of player who is going to put out in a contract year, going to be terrible again in 2014. But this year, I like him, especially at 80th overall.
Oh, sure. If I can catch him maybe in the 6th or the 7th round, or maybe you're in a league where other people have been burned by the Jermichael Finley factor. They've gotten JFF'd before, okay? So now you draft him with his feet for hands, but like you said, contract year, puts up 7 touchdowns. The Packers offense is struggling a little bit, as in, like, when will Jordy Nelson be back? Are we comfortable with Randall Cobb as a number 1? Can James Jones repeat his humongous 12 touchdown performance from last year? It's Finley. And he lost Tom Crabtree, too.
Yeah, and see, rather than like gambling on Tony Gonzalez in the final year of his long, amazing NFL career, or Jason Witten, who's now getting older, I'm gonna wait until the 10th round picks from 118 to 122 ADP. You got Brandon Myers, Jordan Cameron, Martellus Bennett in the Bears offense. I like those. Like, I know that Eli Manning relies on tight ends in the seam. I would go with Myers or Cameron, I think, in the 10th round, rather than roll the dice on Vernon Davis and hope that he produces on a regular basis.
It's just like, hey, what'd you do in the 5th or 6th round? There's information coming through in the hotline. Steven's here.
Yeah, just wanted to let you know James Jones actually had 14 touchdowns last year, not 12.
Thank you very much. I stand corrected thanks to the control room. James Jones had 14 touchdowns last year. Did you know that?
I did not.
14. That's a huge year.
Huge. And you know who? It was Jordy Nelson the year before who had the 15 touchdowns, who regressed the following year.
I think he caught 9 of them against Houston, though, in that one game.
Yes, he did. Let's move on. Tight ends, the crop is thin. Let's move on to defenses.
Can I just get one tight end, please?
Please.
Come on. I mean, if nothing else, as a Patriot, as a homer, I got to say, not with the Gronk in mind, although I did steal him in the 6th round of a draft recently, Sudfeld. That's all I'm going to say.
Sudfeld?
Take him in the 12th. You're going to be happy. He's going to play the first 3 games. He's going to be a backup, playing the Hernandez role later on. Do not be surprised if he's got like 53 catches, 800 yards, and 7 touchdowns. Who would go home unhappy about that?
That's about as good as you can hope for with a regular tight end these days. Defenses, Seahawks and Niners are going to go off the board right away. They're still going to produce. I never want that first or second ranked defense, because someone always pulls a defense 2 rounds too early, and they go after those big name defenses. I don't like the value of those first defenses off the board. I like waiting, like hitting that magic 100 pick mark. Then I like the Texans a lot because here's the thing, you get a lot of variance in terms of turnovers. So you don't know which way fumbles are going to bounce. You can't really rely on turnovers necessarily. So I like those teams that get those sacks.
In addition to the stats that they put up, like sacks, and too bad pressures don't count. Could J.J. Watt actually push the pocket and go beyond the 20.5 sacks, even though he lost Connor Barwin? But he does get back the other HGH factory that plays linebacker there. You know who I'm talking about,
Hey,
Los
Control,
Angeles.
who's Nick thinking about right now? Let us know. Cushing?
Yes, Brian Cushing. Thank you. All set. Stand down.
Hey, Control, never mind.
You've got Brooks Reed there. I'm thinking that the Houston defense could be one of the only ones I would possibly take in the first 12 rounds because of the safety combination. You've got Ed Reed with the veteran presence, and he still knows how to game.
Yep.
He's still a ball hawk. And this other kid they got in from South Carolina, Swearington, otherwise known as the guy who ended the career of the tight end that came from the Jets, who's in Miami now, the poor guy.
You're thinking of...
I am thinking of Benedict Cumberbatch, star of Star Trek. Hold on. Yes?
Yeah.
DJ Swearinger.
Swearinger. Okay.
Yeah. Also, what's the tight end in Miami who just had his career ended?
That was Dustin Keller.
Dustin Keller.
All right. Jesus. I think we would have written...
Just came to me while they were
I think we would have written these down.
You would think we actually watch football before we do a fantasy program.
Bengals, I love as a 5th off the board. Geno Atkins, Vontaze Burfict. That's a great defense, and I like that value at 120 much more so than the Seahawks at 85.
You can't make me pick a defense before the final 3 rounds just because I feel like there are too many value picks and sleepers that I want to suss out in the running backs, in the world of the tight ends, and wide receivers. I'm thinking I'm going to be a late round guy who's maybe going to go for somebody like the Ravens. Wait, what?
The Ravens are trending in ADP behind the Patriots.
Come on.
I'm not kidding. Your Patriot fan brethren are picking the Patriots ahead of the Ravens. Foolish. The Ravens are going to be still fantastic on defense. I also like in the later rounds St. Louis Rams.
The Rams. I
great
like that defense.
Yeah.
I do. I like Janoris Jenkins.
That defense is going to be there in
Chris
the 13th,
Long.
14th round. That's going to put you great numbers, great value. I like the Rams.
Totally. Fantastic value defense pick. And if they don't work out for you, then you can always trade them and somebody else, or you can pick up you can become the guy that rotates in and out and does the waiver wire defense system.
Whoever's playing the Chargers every week, whoever's playing the Bills every week.
Completely, yeah. Don't go by sticker price. That's all I can say about defenses.
No, I'm with you on that. While we're talking about value picks, sleepers, let's talk about our sleeper picks for the year, because here's the thing. Everybody's looking for this magical, fantasy unicorn of what's a sleeper. Sleeper is just someone who presents better relative value.
Sure.
So, you can say LaShawn McCoy at number 9 overall is a sleeper if you think he's going to be a top 3 fantasy running back.
Sure.
So
my only question, though, is when people talk about sleepers so often, when the fantasy season begins and we all start doing our research and we get the prognostications and watch the programs, when sleepers are mentioned so often, don't they get spoiler alerted? Don't we now know they're not sleepers anymore and now they just become mid-round picks?
It depends on whether you are dialed in to the best fantasy knowledge right here in the war room, or whether you're one of those choke jobs watching some other sort of fantasy expertise, some one of those other crap shows.
I don't want to be a choke job.
My sleepers at 121 overall, Bryce Brown. This, again, if you're buying into the Philadelphia Eagles offense, as I am, I think that Bryce Brown is going to be a good flex play, even possible RB2, with LaShawn McCoy being healthy. That offense is going to operate at such a level that there's going to be enough touches to go around, make Bryce Brown a fantastic, get him in the 10th, 11th, 12th round. Whew, love it.
Not even as a handcuff.
Not even as a handcuff. I mean, especially as a handcuff.
Well, especially.
Sure. However, I think you're going to see him getting 10, starting out at 10, maybe 15, even 18 touches a game. That offense operates at a tempo that I think that he is going to be a great play. And by the way, for those of you that are saying, oh, he's got fumble problems, yes, he does. Chip Kelly is aware of them, is still going to get him those touches. He has plans to use him in the offense.
That's a great flex play if somebody gets 15, 18 touches.
Yeah.
A game.
Christian Michael of the Seahawks, not going to see a ton of action. However, if Marshawn Lynch goes down, he's the man in Seattle, not Robert Turbin. I like picking up him in the 14th, 15th round in a keeper league, stashing him on the bench, assuming you've made the right calls up until that point.
I've been reading that Christian Mingle is doing a nice job in the preseason.
Indeed.
And you love your Seahawks.
I do, got to pick up a guy, stash my bench. Danny Amendola, your New England Patriots. Not a sleeper by any sort of, obviously you know who Danny Amendola is. I think at 44, 45 overall, the knock on him, can he stay healthy? It's a bit of a roll of the dice. He's only played, I think, hey, Control, how many games has Amendola played over the last 2 seasons?
I'm going to bet 16.
I think it's 12 total over the last 2 years.
12.
But if he stays healthy, he has already become very obviously Tom Brady's go-to target in a high up-tempo. Ufford.
Amendola played in 12 games over the last 2 years combined.
How many?
That is me knowing things.
Burned again,
Danny
Stevens.
Amendola, if he stays healthy, a shoo-in for 100-plus catches in a PPR league. Roll those dice. I like it.
I feel like he reminds Tom Brady of somebody.
Yeah, maybe. Let's not mention that, though. Jermichael Finley, we've already talked about, and Deshaun Jackson, the 26th wide receiver by rankings ADP. He is going to be maybe not top 10 value, but I think top 15 wide receivers fantasy-wise.
And he's also, if your league does award for special teams points, he's not a PPR machine, but he is returning punts again this year. And as we remember a couple of years ago, when he single-handedly ran a double reverse loop around the Giants' heart before sticking a dagger in it.
That was entertaining.
As a guy who has had 2 of his worst nights of his life handed to him by the New York Giants, I loved that return so very much. Thank you, Deshaun.
Let's talk about your sleepers, Nick. Who you got?
All right, for my sleepers, the first one, I'm down with KBT. Yeah, you know me. That's Kenbrell Tompkins. And here's why. It's not just that, it's such a fun-loving story. Like this guy, he was an undrafted rookie free agent who was also the age of most NFL players when their careers end. He's 25. He was in trouble. No one heard of him. From Cincinnati. Belichick never drafts from Cincinnati. This kid should be from Rutgers. It's that he is fast. He's off the line. He's a precise route runner, and here's the most important part. He is the pretty girl at the prom who has caught the eye of the homecoming king, who is the quarterback, and that is Tom Brady. He went off for 8 for 116 against the Detroit Lions in the preseason, and like I said earlier, a preseason does not an actual or fantasy season make. But Kenbrell Tompkins is going to get the job of number 2 opposite Amendola. And as we know, Amendola is made of chandelier glass. It's beautiful, but it's fragile.
Yes, indeed. What else? You got Miles Austin.
Now, Miles Austin, here's a couple of factors in play. He was hurt a lot last year.
Yes, he was.
We're expecting the offense to be better in Dallas this year.
True.
Everyone is healthy, including Miles Austin. The Dez Bryant sloppy seconds factor. Dez is going to draw double coverage, left, right, up, down, BA select start.
Yeah.
That's going to leave Miles Austin wide open way more often than you should for somebody like him, who truly has wide receiver 1 capabilities. Caught a touchdown against the Bengals in the back of the end zone in the preseason. Looked really, really good. He is going to get a lot of checkdowns. He's going to get a lot of second looks. He's going to get probably 9 touchdowns this year. And he's probably going to be the first guy to give Tony Romo that, are you serious? You just threw that pass look. And I think Tony Romo needs a lot of those because Miles Austin's played with him. Number 3, Giovanni Bernard, Hard Knocks crush.
I think that he is already bringing down the value of Benjarvis Green Ellis, brought in to be the starter. I think by week 8, week 7, week 6, something sooner than that, you're going to see him getting the lion's share of the carries. As soon as he sharpens up his pass protection game a little bit, and Benjarvis Green Ellis looks to be an unexciting player. As that becomes,
Right.
I think that's a good pick. I like it.
All I can say about this is that he's got the kind of speed, the flash, the skill, and the cutback ability to work in that offense, which we said before, led by Andy Dalton, is not terribly dynamic. I'm going to say it here right now. You guys can tweet at me later on and say, thanks, Nick, you hooked me up. Get him in the 5th or 6th round, go a little early. 2013 Muscle Hamster. This is the new Doug Martin right here.
Really?
Yes.
Bold predictions. Speaking of bold predictions,
And
Reggie
right
Bush.
there, I said I was going to talk about him later.
Yeah.
Reggie Bush. Matt Stafford threw almost 100 passes to his running backs, Joyous Bell Music and Michael Row the Boat Ashore.
Actually their names, yes.
Yes, those are actually their names. And that was last year when he threw 720 passes. Maybe he throws 20% less this year. But he's got one of the best runners on screen passes, slants, and checkdowns in the entire NFL. If you have PPRs in your league, and you definitely should be in a league where you get half a point PPR, Reggie Bush is your guy. He was one of the top 10 running backs last year.
I see.
And he
I
faded.
think 60 catches, assuming he stays healthy. Easily.
800 yards rushing, 60 catches, let's say 9 touchdowns total.
I think he's got 1,000 yards in him rushing. Yeah, I think if Reggie Bush stays healthy, that's a Lions team that's going to be better than their 4-12 year last year.
Sure.
They're going to be closer to 8-8 this year, maybe even challenging for the playoffs, assuming that everyone's healthy. I like the Lions offense.
Now the last one, David Wilson. It's math that is this simple. Already, let's all do it at home together. Andre Brown's broken leg plus breakaway speed times nobody else equals RB1 value.
Yep.
Drafted in the 3rd to 5th round.
5th round, no way. He's going before that. Definitely pick up David Wilson. I like that call a lot. Let's talk busts.
Okay.
And again, these are busts. Like, it doesn't have to be the Chris Johnson 2010 terrible after 2,000 yards sort of bust. This is
Look at your bust list. It is like just it's like a movie starring Tom Cruise and Meryl Streep and a bunch of A-listers is going to crash at the box office. These are all fantasy superstars, or so we're led to think.
Steven Jackson. Listen, I think Steven Jackson might have a terrific fantasy year in the 2nd round with the 17th overall pick. Are you going to go with a running back who is 30 years old? Is that what you want to gamble on? It's the 2nd round pick.
Yeah, okay, fine, but let me ask you this. Which team ran the ball from the 10-yard line to the end zone more last year?
The Falcons certainly did a lot of that. And
they were the number 1 team in doing
Michael Turner was largely
old and fat.
terrible, and yet was still useful. I'm
telling you.
It's one of those things. It's the injury risk of a 30-year-old running back with 10,000 miles on him. I am seriously concerned about him being worth your 2nd round pick. In the 3rd round, yes. Yes. In the 2nd round, no way.
I'm going to throw these words at you. Motivated Corey Dillon 2.0, and I'll leave it at that.
We'll disagree with that. Lamar Miller, I'm just not a big fan of that Dolphins offense. I think that Ryan Tannehill is certainly better than expected. Daniel Thomas might be the goal line back. I just don't love I don't know. He'll get the touches, sure. I just find that he's the guy that's just got disappointment written all over him.
I feel like taking anybody from the Miami Dolphins offense is like getting lunch from Subway. It was there.
Yeah, I'm not starving anymore.
I need
I'm
to
not
eat.
gonna die.
Yeah, I'm not gonna die.
I got a guy in the 5th round, I guess.
Someone on my team.
I'll start him.
All right, I ate fresh. Yeah.
Colin Kaepernick, I've already touched on before. Again, perfectly serviceable, but better quarterbacks behind him in Matt Stafford and Tony Romo. Let somebody else take Kaepernick.
I'd even maybe take Mike Vick. I'd take a chance.
I would, yeah. I actually, in my last draft, I took a late flyer on Mike Vick, and I feel pretty darn good about it.
You should.
Yeah. And then Ray Rice, I've already mentioned, and Mike Wallace. Nobody goes to Miami. You're like, now that he's in Miami, he's gonna be better than ever. That's just not what happens. People go to Miami, and they're worse than they have ever been.
Yeah, all this offense is really needed was finally somebody who could burn and run downfield. All right, well, he needs to have a game that sets up the downfield pass, and B, someone to get it to him accurately, who isn't in the 3rd year of learning the quarterback position.
No.
There's other guys I like way beyond those Dolphins. I'm with you 100%.
What about your bus? You've got a nice list too.
Ready for this?
Yeah.
Bam, show me. Survey says, look at that. Right atop the board.
RG3, my goodness.
One of the sexiest names in all of professional and fantastical football. And here's why. It's not about the fact that doubt has been expressed over how he's going to be used this year. It's not about the fact that he's 8 months removed from an ACL surgery. We saw Adrian Peterson recover from it last year. It's that we're not going to see him do the same sort of offense, attack, and running plays he did last year.
Control, can you find out how many knee surgeries Robert Griffin has had? Thank you. I think it's 3. I think
his third ACL?
His third.
I think this is his second.
He's had the ACL surgery on I think the same knee twice. I don't know. But yeah. No.
They're not going to use him the same way. Like I was telling you before, how many times last year was it, yo, you got to see this play RG3 made, and you saw a beautiful seam pass, or you saw like a great 12-yard button hook or a curl? No, it was always him scrambling, running, going 75 yards on a naked boot. He can't do that right now because he is one hit away from possibly not playing football ever again.
Yeah.
So I think he's not going to live up to the hype and give you 30 touchdowns plus from the quarterback position. I'd stay away in general. Chris Johnson. Oh, it's for you.
Yellow.
This was RG3's second ACL
Second
surgery.
ACL surgery. All right, thank you very much.
You can pay me that $1 after the show.
His third one is next year.
Oh, you see into the future, you with your magic unicorn. Chris Johnson, no. You can't show up at my house with my wife, Bandit. No, you can't take my family hostage and make me take Chris Johnson. No, no.
He is
No.
never.
No.
That 2009 2,000-yard season is never going to. That man is not walking through the door. It's not happening. He will get you 1,100 yards, 1,200 yards, 8 touchdowns, maybe. But you are going to hate him every other week of the year, and you're going to say, oh, should I start him this week? He looked pretty good last week. And when you start him, he will do poorly, and when you sit him, he's going to be awesome.
He had 4 of 16 games of fantasy relevance last year where he rushed for well over 100 yards. Aside from the fact, I think he got over half of his rushing yards in 4 games, and he had another 1,220-yard season.
Yeah.
The Titans are not going anywhere. Who, tell me right now, is sitting in their armchair watching game film going, we can't let the Titans roll all over us this season? Nobody fears the Titans.
No. I would have actually, at the 25th overall spot, you can get Maurice Jones-Drew.
Sure.
And that's an uninspiring, terrible Jags offense, and yet I would feel much better putting MJD in my starting lineup every week than Chris Johnson.
How about this? Do something crazy like knowing that Green Bay has a dynamite offense, and now that he's going to be the RB1, even if he is a rook, you watch the way he ran last year. Get all over that Eddie Lacy. Do it. Take a lead.
46th overall is what he's going right now.
I'd rather Eddie Lacy a round later or even in the same round than Chris Johnson wherever people are taking him. Do not care what his ADP is. Number 3, Frank Gore. Frank Gore looked 47 when he came into the NFL. This is the year he finally runs like he's 47.
Yeah.
He is the lead back. He's turning 30 in a pistol offense where he's going to be the first option. Now, I'm not saying LaMichael James should be the man because I know he's hurt right now, and Cap is obviously the best running back on that team, even though he plays the QB position. Frank Gore is just going to start to show the signs. You cannot carry the ball that often and be as ankle and injury prone as he is. This is the year for Frank Gore finally has 780 yards, 5 touchdowns, and completely breaks your heart that you used an end of second, early third round pick on him.
Oh yeah, no, don't love the value. If I could get Frank Gore in the 4th round, I would be Okay, sure. If
Maybe.
he's sitting around, if everybody else in my league is like, I don't want Frank Gore, I'll look at him at like 42. Sure. But
Let's play this game called Things You Will Not Be Hearing from Anyone in January 2014. Frank Gore carried me to victory. No.
no. And then you've got Eric Decker.
Decker?
I'm in total agreement with you on this one.
3 words. Blame Wes Welker.
Yeah.
Eric Decker last year, over 1,000 yards, 85 receptions, 13 touchdowns. Monster season. Was one of my best picks last year. Brought me all the way to the fantasy Super Bowl. But if Welker, just let's say he improves 50% on Brandon Stokely's numbers last year of 45 catches and 5 touchdowns. Let's say Welker goes for 68 and 8. Where are they coming from? Demarius Thomas? Jacob Tamme? No. They're coming from Decker.
Yeah, absolutely. This is and again, you don't want to take too much from the preseason, but Peyton Manning very obviously loves throwing to Wes Welker already. Demarius Thomas is still their game-breaking wide receiver. He's going to get his touches. Eric Decker is going to be left out in the cold. Don't get me wrong, still a very good wide receiver, just not at 56.3. He's not going to give you last year's production.
And finally, it breaks my heart to do this, considering how much the law firm meant to me as a fan of the New England Patriots. But I have a theory in fantasy football. It's called the party mix theory. Now, when you open up a bag of party mix, what are you excited to have? What are you looking for in there?
I'm excited about the pretzels.
Yeah, really?
Yeah.
Because most people are not. I open a bag of party mix. I'm looking for the tiny triangular nachos. I'm looking for maybe like the little rye crisps.
The rye crisp with the garlic?
Crisps. Yeah,
Oh,
the garlic rye crisps.
Yeah, they're fantastic.
I want those little like buttery bread knobs.
Okay.
Great band name, by the way.
That's
it could
what
also be a
that's what I was
fantasy
thinking
name.
of when I said pretzels, the buttery bread knobs.
Buttery bread knobs.
Yeah.
You know what people don't? Maybe even the honey roasted nuts or the cashews. Huh? You know what people don't want? The pretzels. And do you know who is the fantasy football equivalent of getting a handful of pretzels in a bag of party mix?
Ben Jarvis Green Ellis.
In the 5th round of your fantasy draft.
He is the successor to previous fantasy unexciting picks like Cedric Benson.
Yes.
It's like Soviet architecture, just drab, boring, maybe effective in some regards, but not something that you're going to appreciate looking at.
Buying your groceries at Costco. Well, it filled the house. It really wasn't exciting. Honestly, it's kind of like it is. It's the party mix theory, and it breaks my heart. I mean, it's like, drafting Ben Jarvis Green Ellis as your number 1 or number 2 running back is like using the restroom at an airport. Nobody wants to do it, but sometimes someone has to.
It's a matter of function.
And then you're left with that thought for days and weeks, and there's some stank on that.
It is a long fantasy football season, folks, and we are going to be here live every Sunday from 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. when the games start Eastern time. That's 9 to 10 a.m. Pacific time. Are there other time zones?
No, not that I know of.
So noon Eastern, 9 Pacific. We're going to be right here giving you live fantasy football advice before the week start. Check it out on sbnation.com, on YouTube. We are going to be doing it.
And the easiest way for you guys to get some stardom and sit-em advice, maybe try to figure out who should be your best wide receiver 1, 2, 3, or better yet, find out who's going to give you the most joy of flex, hit us up on Twitter and we can answer the questions during the show.
Twitter, also the Fantasy War Room at sbnation.com is where to find us. Once again, I'm Matt Ufford. That's Nick Stevens. This is the Fantasy War Room. Let's have a great season.
See you next Sunday. Great job in every one. Really some capital work. Scotch for everybody.